Welcome to Bosco Campus Vision. You are watching the campus television channel of Don Bosco College, Kottayam. This lecture is on the prescribed syllabus of 5th semester BA English Literature and Language. Paper is Literary Criticism. In this lecture, I am going to deal with next classical writer, Horace. Horace. His full name is Quintus Horatius Flaccus. The time period is 65 to 8 BC. The greatest Roman poet, critic Quintus Horatius Flaccus, known in English as Horace, was born at Venusia in Italy, 65 BC. He was a good friend of Augustus, the ruler of Rome, and his greatest contemporary was Virgil. This time period is 70 to 19 BC. Virgil, Ovid, Horace belong to the age that is called the Augustine age. Horace was practicing poetry, writing to impress influential patrons and friends of imperial court of Augustus. His major work of literary criticism, written towards the end of life, is Epistle to the Poesis, which has come to be known as Ars Poetica or Art of Poetry, as given by Quintilian. First translation of Ars Poetica was during the period of Elizabeth I, and the second translator was Ben Jonson. The translation was published posthumously in 1640. This treaty is in the form of a verified epistle that is a literary composition in the form of a letter, and this is addressed to a patron of the arts, El Piso, advising aspiring poets as to what they ought and ought not to do if they wish to succeed in their poetic ambition. It is a kind of guidance to the art of literary composition. The subject matter of Ars Poetica falls into three divisions. First, Poesis. Second, Poema. Third, Poeta. Poesis is the content of poetry, that is the treatment of subject matter of poetry. Poema is the style of poetry or form of poetry. Poeta, that is a discussion on poets, it is about poet. Let's understand the subject matter of Ars Poetica in detail. First, Poesis. A poem must have organic unity. The subject chosen wisely should be simple and consistent. Poetry is not a mere imitation but a creative adaptation. A practical poet, as an imitative artist, should regard human life and character as his model, deriving from them a language that is true to life. The best way of achieving such a language is to imitate the best models of the Greek writers. You must give your days and nights to the study of Greek models. Then about the nature and art. A poet must be born with some ability, and there will always be scope for originality as long as it follows the dictates of nature. But too much originality is dangerous. It leads to obscurity and incoherence. Imagination should be exercised with discretion and moderation. The language of poetry is finer and higher than the language of common man. The genre must be carefully chosen to fit the subject matter, and a particular genre should stick to the meter allotted to it by the ancient Greeks. epic poetry, iambic pentameter, poems of complaint, elegiac verse, etc. Horace recognized that the language is in a constant process of change. Language is like a tree and words are leaves, which with every year are succeeded by new ones. The poet must be judicious, guided by discipline and moderation in the choice of word. Next is Poema. Plot should be based on old familiar stories. Skillful treatment is required for new themes. All the incidents of the plot should have a logical connection. Characters must be consistent and true to life. The quality of characters must fit their respective ages. There should be nothing implausible in the characterization or in the action. The denouement should be the natural outcome of the incident and not a matter of chance. A play should have strictly 5 acts. There must be more than 3 characters in one scene. The chorus should form an integral part of the play. No unnatural violence should be enacted on stage, though Aristotle thought it permissible. Next is Poeta. The art of poetry is the outcome of incessant toil. The poet must work to polish the lines until it attains artistic excellence. The purpose of literature is to teach and delight, or mix the giving pleasure with useful precepts of life. Minor faults in poetry may be forgiven. Great poets have been great prophets, and a poet must be proud of his art. Horace rejects the idea of poetic madness or inspiration, but cautions that romantic extravagances must be kept under restraint. Horace is somewhat a practical poetic critic whose aim was to improve the efforts and talents of contemporaries. He always cites examples from ancient Greek poets whom he upholds as a true poetic model to be followed. Poets for him are born as well as made. Next is a very important term given by Horace, that is decorum. Decorum is a literary term first associated with classical criticism. It implies a sense of propriety, regularity, balancing, order and balance in thought and expression in literary composition. According to Aristotle's definition of tragedy, contains principles of decorum when it says that a tragic action should be complete in itself and of a certain magnitude, and that the plot should have unity with a beginning, middle, and an end. Horace applies this principle to all compositors, dramatic and poetic. There should be a conscious attempt on the part of a writer in the choice of subject matter, form, and expression. Horace held that a writer should not attempt to write anything that is beyond his talents. That means a beginner should not try to compose an epic or a tragedy. In the choice of characters and their sentiments, propriety should be offended. That is, a boy as a character must behave like a boy and not as a man. As far as possible, shocking and gruesome scenes like bloodletting and murderers should be avoided on stage. As for expression, there must be a rigorous correlation between the thought and the diction. A tragic scene demands elevated diction. A simple plot should have simplicity of diction. On the whole, decorum demands propriety. This became the hallmark of neoclassical criticism of the 17th and 18th century Europe. Now let's talk about rhetoric as given by Horace. The importance and gravity of classical rhetoric is felt in three areas. First, motivation to compose. Second, moral issues that govern a work. Third, the factors relating to style of composition. Now, Cicero provided the deep structure for rhetoric, which is classified into invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. In terms of quantitative proportions, Horace classified rhetoric into exordium, that is the introductory part of the discourse or composition. Next is the statement of case. Third is partition. Fourth is proof. Fifth, refutation, that is the art of refusing or disapproving. And sixth is peroration, that is the concluding part of oration. Then he divides style into high, middle, and low. In this lecture, I have discussed the subject matter of Ars Poetica. It is an important work given by Horace, and Horace's Decorum. Do the given exercise and submit on time. Thank you.